Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the Scientology Money Project on YouTube, part of the extended SPTV network. However, tonight we have a different logo due to StreamYard problems. I like that music. Welcome, everyone. Good to see you here. We're lining up. Tonight, let's go to some comments. I want to welcome everyone. And we had Clearwater Chad in early, hours ago. He's been out Inspector Generaling, which has been cracked up. By the way, the tuxedo, I decided to have tuxedo night here at the Scientology Money Project because it's like, why not? Why not? I saw this cult leader, David Dick Watts, Miscavige, wearing a tuxedo. And I thought, I can wear a tuxedo and maybe, even give out some bowling trophies for donations. I don't have anything handy. But anyway, tonight we're going to talk about a story we've been following. But let's say hi to everyone. Hi to Clearwater Chad. Oh, well, say hi to him back. And Chad's been doing these videos where he's been the Inspector General out keeping things safe. He's satirizing somebody. Kati, it's hard to get mods that can do Europe time. So I'm going to try to do something, on Europe time. But right now it's late. I have to get someone at 3:30 in the UK. And it was getting difficult to keep Alex up in the middle of the night. So hello, Patrick. And I'll just stand by. Denise, welcome. Hello, Joe. Welcome. Psych on the Rocks. Hey, y'all. I like all those emojis. Yes, please do hit that like and subscribe button. And one thing we're going to do. Hello, Wayne's World. Glad to see you here. Yes, you should look spiffy. It's why not? Why not? It's now I have I should have put my diamond spats on, but but I didn't have time. So anyway, hi, Warrior Queen. And you bon vivant. Well, someone has to be a bon vivant. Why not me? Yes. It's sort of it's sort of a man of mystery look. Like I could be. By the way, the other thing is I did get my hair cut, all the dead ends, like that. I got a lot cut off, so I got all the dead ends. It's looking. Yeah, but when you're a PI, sometimes you have to look like James Bond. I thought about my East Stewart Mill glasses, but no, that only goes with East Stewart Mills. So yeah, maybe as a PI, sometimes I have to wear a tuxedo. Well, thank you, Bunny. I'm trying to look very dapper. Just to, thank you, Nancy. Yeah, I'm just trying to why not? Diamonds and spats seem dandy. They do. I really like old Hollywood. And, sometimes you just want to put on the nines for your audience, but also, yeah, it really is. It really is. And this is such a nice jacket. It's so anyway, we're doing a tuxedo just for the audience and to show you that I'm the classiest classiest presenter on SPTV. I think no one else has crossed the tuxedo line. So by wearing a tuxedo, it's sort of like challenges other creators wear tuxedos. And so I had I just like the classic black tie. But tonight, enough about me. It's about GPB Capital Holdings, Scientologist David Gentile and his criminal co-defendant Jeffrey Schneider. And I like this shoot. That's David Gentile there, a photograph of him burning up his investors' money. And there's the god he worships, L. Ron Hubbard, smoking a stogie, just like Grant Cardone. So Aaron did a live having a Jack and Coke in a solo cup. It's so cool to just have a drink in a solo cup. I mean, I have regular glassware, but yeah, Aaron did a live stream on John Legere, the lawsuit Grant Cardone filed against him. I have some ideas on that. Basically, one, I have evidence of Grant being a fraud. I absolutely have evidence of him being a fraud and a scam artist. So, Jean Legere, I'm going to be reaching out to him with evidence I have. And sometimes, before we get into our other Scientology guy, other Scientologist, Grant is seeking damages for 100 million. It's like, oh, sometimes in legal cases, you do things like ask for a summary judgment. You don't expect to get it, but my guess was Legere was wanting to see Grant's answer, because when you make a motion for a summary judgment to dismiss the other party's case, often you're not going to win, but you're going to get their strategy. You're going to get their case. And then this gives you room to develop your discovery. And you do a series of questions where you deny or admit, things like that. So for Grant to claim that he wants $100 million, that he's been damaged to $100 million, he's going to have to produce a lot of financial records to show how much money he has, what his actual cash flow is. So I think he's stupid pursuing the lawsuit. That is Grant Cardone, because he's opened himself to discovery, and it's going to be brutal. And I'm not a lawyer, but I know enough about it. Hi, Jen. Yeah, everyone's looking sharp. We should all wear bow ties. I think maybe when I go out protesting next time, I'll wear a bow tie, and then I'll have like a special podium built. Like, yeah, who doesn't? Back in the old days, you could get, it's like a go cup. I used to come up in Maryland. I was out there years ago, like 1982. I was in Maryland. You could have these drive-through liquor stores where you could get a go cup. You just pull up in your Oldsmobile Super 88 and say, "Hey, Johnny, give me a go cup. Give me a G&T to go." Except I'm drinking Jack and Coke. And I prefer to wear, yes, Marty Chad. I think Clearwater Chad has got himself some Marty BTs. Grant's going to raise 200 million since people are picking on him. Yeah. Okay. So anyway, I just wanted to open. I'm going to do a thing on Grant Cardone. I'm going to show some evidence. The fact that Grant is out to like fight the internet that's what Anonymous, that Tom Cruise did that. And that didn't work out well for Tom Cruise. So if Grant thinks anyone gives a flying fuck about his, like he's going to take on the internet, Grant's problem is that he's been running his mouth online for way too long. And a lot of people like me have downloaded a lot of older stuff. The SEC had to dial him back. So let's get to our guy, David Gentile. Just by way of background for new Scientology watchers, David Gentile is a Scientologist. And in 2013, he started a company called GPB Capital Holdings, like Grant Cardone's company. And there's some parallels here that are interesting that I'll discuss. David Gentile is opened a Regulation D private equity company. And for people who don't know what that is, there's publicly traded companies like Apple, Microsoft, or my favorite, NVIDIA. And I made a killing in NVIDIA stock. Karen and I cleaned up on NVIDIA because they're going to build, anyway, their stock went on a tear. We cleaned up and I cashed out. I'm going to another play because I like to invest in tech. It's all I know. That's why I don't, and, plus also, it pays for nice tuxedos when you make a profit. And then so anyway, so there's publicly traded companies like Apple, Microsoft, NVIDIA, Google, and then there's companies that are privately owned, and they sell securities under Regulation D. And there's laws, and then there's crowdfunding, which is called Regulation A. So Regulation D, private equity, it's an illiquid, which means your money's going to be locked up for 5 to 10 years. Grant Cardone takes investments and locks your money up for 10 years. When he went to regulate, and you have to be a qualified investor. I think you have to have 200,000 in income if you're married, and that's independent of that's 200,000 in income and over $1 million in net worth, independent of your house, to be a qualified investor. And then Regulation A is called crowdfunding. You can raise $1,000 from people. They don't have to be regulated, but their risk is less. But in any case, Regulation D, Regulation A, private equity are generally viewed as illiquid because your cash is locked up. If I go buy 1,000 shares of Google and I hold it for a week, and it goes up $20 in a week, and then I want to sell it, and then I've made 20,000, and then I'll set aside whatever the capital gains will be. But so I can flip. I don't day trade, but the difference is with private equity, it's illiquid. You can't get the liquid cash back. And so private equity is high risk, is viewed as high risk. Sometimes you can make a lot of money, but generally Regulation D investments don't have a good reputation in the investment community. Things like Cardone Capital that are highly illiquid, where your money's locked up for 10 years. When Grant Cardone started selling to his investors for between 4 and 6% interest, that was in the zero interest environment around prior to the pandemic, and then the interest rate hikes. Grant Cardone basically said he said the Fed wouldn't raise interest. He's gotten so many things wrong. He's not a financial advisor. He acts like one sometimes, and I think that's part of the problem he's going to have when he goes to court. So David Gentile started GPB Capital Holdings in New York City, and in 2013, along with his partners Jeff Lash, whose name will become important. And he also started with Jeffrey Schneider. Jeffrey Schneider spells his name Jeffrey. He doesn't have the E. I don't know if that's an affectation or I'm Jeffrey, but like I want the E in my name. If I took I don't know why you would take the E off your name. 10-year lockup. Holy shit. I'd love a forensic accountant to go over Grant's books. Oh, I think that could happen. Certainly if I were Jean Legere, and I'm willing to give him, an affidavit, because I've been collecting shit on Grant for a long time. Yeah, you lock it up for 10 years. That's why it's called illiquid, as opposed to liquid. So I can go sell whatever stocks I have, and the funds will clear in a day or two, and then I have my money. If I invest with Grant Cardone, if I invested at 4% in 2019, say I've invested 10,000, that's locked up till 2029 or till when Grant decides to sell the property. So this was David Gentile's thing, is the money was locked up for a long time. So David Gentile starts the company, and he's going to buy on car dealerships. He bought a lot of car dealerships, and he bought healthcare. And that was a guy that worked for him named Evan Marianthopoulos, who came out of Door Biopharma. I've covered this on my blog. My blog, Scientology Money Project, is the go-to for GPB Capital. I followed it. So car dealerships, biopharma. He also wanted to buy healthcare software. He got into waste management in New York City, and that I want to talk about. I showed early on, because I've been following this case for a long time, I showed early on that there was Russian mob money going into GPB Capital as the seed money. And there's a Russian oligarch named Mikhail Chernaya. He's the reported boss of the Izmailovskaya crime family that's in Moscow. And in fact, his Chernaya, one of the seed investors through his daughters who were in Boca Raton, Chernaya's cousin, I believe his cousin, lived with Vladimir Putin's cousin in Moscow in the 80s. So there's some Russian oligarch money. There's money that came from the Speaker of the House in Brazil, 20 million, and that was the Speaker of the House in the Petrobras scandal. That was in the company owned by Brazil. It's their national oil company. A lot of politicians went to prison for embezzling Petrobras money, but 20 million of that stolen money went into GPB Capital to the Cayman Islands. I documented that. The Swiss banker David Munoz Suarez went to jail along with the Brazilian Speaker of the House. The so dirty money went into it, in my opinion, and I've shown it. The money from the Chernaya sisters went into early GPB Capital. A lot of Scientologists worked at GPB Capital, and I've covered them on my blog. And so they were spending a lot of money buying car dealerships. There's an interesting story that I did cover, and I just want to get the name here. So let me use my Google machine. Here it is. Now, one interesting thing is there's a fellow named, and I got to get this right because we're getting into some things. Okay, John Staluppi. He was reputedly tied to organized crime in America, and so John Staluppi had I'll give you an example of what David Gentile is involved in. John Staluppi was reportedly formerly a member of one of the 5 families in New York in organized crime, and then got out of the families and went into the car dealerships. So this is just giving you context about David Gentile. So John Staluppi went into car dealerships. He was once accused of mob ties, involved in things like strip clubs and things. We call it adult entertainment. Nothing wrong with adults being entertained. No knock there. But Staluppi was purportedly at one time a member of one of the crime families. So, but he went legit. Oh yeah, he was an alleged Colombo capo. So at one time, if you look at Cosa Nostra News, one time he was supposed to be a member of the Colombo family. He was actually a capo. So he loves super yachts. He's wealthy. He loves cars. He's a philanthropist. Well, he owned a private jet, and he sold it to buy a bigger jet because you got to have a bigger jet. And this is really an entertaining inside source thing, because a lot of people I have inside sources on GPB Capital. So Staluppi sells a jet, and David Gentile buys it because he and Jeffrey Schneider have to have a jet, and this is part of the narrative. They have to, because when you get successful, you got to have a jet. Anyway, Staluppi, sells David Gentile his jet, and I guess from what I hear, Gentile who's a Sicilian. He's from a place called Ortigia. His family comes from Ortigia, and that's what he named his boats, Ortigia. And so Gentile is Sicilian, so he fancies himself, and his father Santo, who will come into the story later, ran an accounting firm there in Long Island called GPB, and that's Gentile, Pismeni, and Brengel. Those were Santo Gentile's, David's father's partners. And GPB, David Gentile was like this Long Island bookkeeper, and his father Santo, did CPA work as well. So David was a CPA, and he finds Scientology and falls in love. He gets some Russian mob money, or alleged Russian mob money, from the Chernaya sisters out of Boca Raton to buy these car dealerships. So he buys, as they raise more and more money, he buys money from John Staluppi, or he buys the jet from John Staluppi, and he becomes enamored of like someone of Staluppi's caliber and reputation, because Staluppi has super yachts, and he has car dealerships, and he's like a model of success with a past some people might find attractive. That's why people listen to Sammy the Bull Gravano on and Michael Francese on YouTube. Is people used to be in that life, they're interesting. So Stulupi sees right through Gentile apparently and wants nothing to do with the guy because I get from my sources, Stulupi, David Gentile calls Stulupi, and Stulupi gets pissed. All he wanted out of Gentile was to buy his jet, and so John Stulupi, alleged former Colombo guy, says to David, "Hey David, lose my number," and hangs up. So when someone like Stulupi tells you to lose their number, you better lose their number. Don't call back. So Gentile's, persona non grata there, but he has some family connections, and there's a really just comically funny story of some other stuff that through family ties, but he buys into waste management. And when the moving fast forward, he buys a waste management company called 5 Star Waste Management. So we have him with the Chernayer sisters, whose father is supposed to be head of a Russian crime family, who got rich in the aluminum wars in Russia. So he's got ties to Chernayer, the Russian mob boss. He's got ties to his daughter. He's trying to rub elbows with organized crime. We don't want a reputed member who wants nothing to do with them. And then he buys into waste management in New York. In New York, when you say waste management, there's a 3-letter word, starts with M, ends with B. That company, 5 Star, would later be raided by the FBI, or rather they would execute a search warrant when they also executed a search warrant on GPB Capital. So, what happens is David Gentile and his partner, Jeffrey Schneider, they hit that proverbial Ponzi scheme threshold where they don't have enough money to pay their dividends to their investors. They can't pay distributions. So allegedly Jeffrey Schneider said, "Hey, Dave, we got to man up and write a check," meaning we have to cross that line into Ponzi scheme territory and take new investor money to pay the existing investors. Then they start cooking the books, allegedly cooking the books, and showing that they're making money that they're not making. And then the FBI raids them. They're not allowed to raise any more money. And then their auditor quits. They can't even get an auditor to work for them because any auditor says, I don't want to touch you. The company is put into a monitorship, which means the court orders a monitor, an outside party named Joseph Gardemal, to run the company, because then David Gentile voluntarily resigns as CEO. And so Joseph Gardemal is running it, but David Gentile is very mad. And you got to remember, he's going down to Flag. He's got he's got a really luxurious boat that he goes to the Outer Banks, not the outer. There's a fishing place about 100 miles off Clearwater, and so he's got this luxurious boat, and he's got a condo there. So he's continuing to live large on investor money, and there's a lot of investor money because David Gentile ultimately raises $1.7 billion. And that's with his criminal co-defendant, Jeffrey Schneider, who runs a company called Ascendant Capital. So Ascendant Capital, its broker-dealer network would sell GPB paper because the broker-dealers were promised 10% commission, and they would sell the GPB investments to investors. 17,000 investors, many of them over 65, elderly. I don't know if elderly is the right word, just older, I'm over 65. I don't look at or feel it. I don't think. Maybe I look at it. Depends who's looking at me. But anyway, so they raise 1.7 billion. Suddenly, the FBI raids them, seizes all their phones, documents, and what comes out is that Jeffrey Schneider is using a Gmail account for. He's telling all his people to contact him on a Gmail account so that he doesn't come over oversight. Because when you're running a Ascendant Capital, which is a broker selling securities, the FINRA can check your records, and FINRA is in charge of brokers. So I'm just kind of jumping around here. You can follow the dots. I'm going to show you FINRA. And this is where you can check any broker that you want. FINRA is the Financial Industry Regulatory Authority. I'm going to share this screen with you while we're jumping around. Oh, I better close that. I don't want you to see that. There's some stuff here that's top secret. I have to be careful not to show it to you. So Jeffrey Schneider decides, and it's not a good idea, because FINRA, I'm going to make this the full screen. FINRA is they monitor broker dealers who sell securities. So FINRA, FINRA, you should look about it. If any broker ever wants to sell you something, you can check them. You can actually check them. And so FINRA is allowed to check. Let's go to broker check. We're going to go to broker check, and we're going to make this larger for you. So I'm going to show you how you can protect yourself, but also we're going to just look up Jeffrey Schneider, Jeffry. We're going to check him. And so currently not registered. Yes, more details on Jeffrey Schneider. You know, one thing that makes a PI's life easy is when someone has an unusual name. So Jeffrey without the E. So he has 29 years of experience. But look at all these. This is where you can see if someone's a bad broker. Don't buy a securities from them. Now, look at all these disciplinary actions. So when you go to FINRA and you check a broker, so let's say some man or woman, some rando wants to sell you some securities on a hot deal, maybe something like a Cardone Capital. Cardone doesn't use broker dealers, and that's something I'm going to get into on another show about how they go to market. So these red dots are disciplinary actions, regulatory final. It shows you where a broker's worked for, but all those red dots are regulatory action or customer disputes, complaints. And Jeffrey Schneider, you can see all this employment separation after allegations, final regulatory disciplinary actions. Schneider's lost his Series 7, all his other licenses, but you can just check it. So basically, look at all these. He had a Series 63, a Series 65, Sony 9T0 SIE. So he had a lot of qualifications. He'd been around the industry. These are the companies where he worked for. So knowledge is power. You can always check a broker, see who they worked for. Like he worked for a capital called JPR. FINRA expelled the firm in 2007. He worked for Puritan. FINRA expelled the firm in 2011. He worked for IMS. FINRA expelled the firm in 2018. Ascendant was the firm that he owned that he sold GPB Capital paper through. And basically, so this guy was dirty, and his Securities Exchange Commission was canceled. He's done. He's got criminal charges against him, and Jeffrey Schneider he's a dirtbag. He's a criminal. Everywhere he goes, trouble follows him. I'm not going to be. I'm not going to be, I don't want to be political. I just will add this. Jeffrey Schneider worked with Hunter Biden, and I found that out, and I'm not making a comment on Hunter Biden at all, our president. I'm not going political. I'm just saying, without even looking, I found that Hunter Biden worked with Jeffrey Schneider. And so he's got, the only reason I mention that is Schneider is very well connected. That's all, I'll put it that way. President Biden's brother, Jim Biden, had an investment firm along with Hunter. And that's where the Ponte Negra scandal happened. You can Google Ponte Negra. And it wasn't associated with the Bidens, but I'm just saying that when you realize that Jeffrey Schneider worked for Hunter Biden and had those kind of connections, whenever you do research, you should do the creation story. If you really want to know a firm or people, you do their creation story. How did GPB Capital start? But more importantly, what were its precursors? So Evan Marianthopoulos comes with life science skills, biotech from Dora Biopharma, which has a connection to Ghislaine Maxwell, which has a connection to Epstein. So Jeffrey Schneider comes from a firm that Hunter Biden and his uncle James owned, the president's brother. And it's a troubled thing, and I'll tell that in another story, but it's on my blog. I've documented it all. So the question is, how does an unlikely Long Island CPA named David Gentile come into a guy who's been associated with Hunter Biden, who his other, on the other side of it, one of his other partners has been associated with Ghislaine Maxwell and Jeffrey Epstein? It's all there, and I've documented it. The David Gentile apparently is one of those guys who got into Scientology about 2012, and it just clicked for him. See, that's the thing. Some Scientology clicks for some people. You or I might say, I don't get the reactive mind and all that stuff, but for some people, it's like, bam, it just clicks. It snaps into place. And that can happen. Tina, in the last 20, Jeffrey, you look very snappy. Thank you. I'm trying to be very snappy because I believe I owe my audience more. And I believe that, there's on SPTV, I'm not for a dress code. I'm a long hair hippie, but sometimes you can just kind of like, look at that. Sometimes you can just, and it's sort of, if you want to know what I'm doing, it was like I saw that David Miscavige event, and he always wears a tuxedo. Here's my question to you, my viewers. Who wears it better? Jeffrey Augustine or David Miscavige? I think I do. I think I can wear a tuxedo. Miscavige looks emaciated and old. I think I look LA chic. Who can wear a tux better? Me. Okay, David Miscavige, you got that? I can wear a tuxedo better than you. Yeah, I can. And I gotta tell you, man, listen to music just as an aside. Miley Cyrus, her song, forget the title. I can love me better than you can. Phenomenal. You should watch her YouTube of her performance at the Emmys. Phenomenal performance. So she sings about how she can love herself better than her ex can. Well, I can wear a tux better than David Miscavige can. So I'm kind of wearing a tux to show like I don't need this fluffy poodle pompadour. David Miscavige has such weird hair. And I'm glad you guys like my stream of consciousness stuff because I jump around. So I was showing you, anyway, I can wear a tux better than David Miscavige can. I don't need weird pompadour, this weird fluffy poodle hair pompadour thing going on. By the way, David Gentile, Scientologist, charged with several felonies. You can't get pictures of him. He stays in hiding just like David Miscavige. So trying to scour the Google images or anywhere else for pictures of David Gentile or Jeffrey Snyder. They stay in hiding. They don't want to be seen. And so anyway, so I was going back to my train of thought. So we have David Gentile, this Long Island CPA. He's seemingly like, a white bread CPA. He suddenly is hooking up with the daughters of a Russian oligarch mob boss. He suddenly has money from the Cayman Islands flowing in, dirty money from Brazil from the Speaker of the House. He's suddenly into waste management in New York City, suddenly buying a jet from a reputed former Colombo family capo. Like, how does this going on? It's so interesting. We are your eclectic audience. Well, thank you. I appreciate that. May the force be with you. Okay, so this guy's dirty, is what I'm saying. It's like he's got a lot of like shady connections, but he also has some scary, powerful connections because Hunter Biden is powerful. He's got connections, and he's suing Fox for right now. I mean, not everyone can do that. So, so this unlikely Long Island CPA, and I think it's probably through his dad Santo, who's been doing taxes for a long time, for people, like if you want your taxes done, you go down and see Santo on Long Island. That's all I'm saying, maybe word gets around. And, you go down and see Santo, get your taxes done. If you're in one of the boroughs, that's all. So you got this well-connected broker named Jeffrey Schneider, and he's selling GPB paper at giving the broker dealers 10% commission. So having been in sales 30 years, your time's finite, and you might as well like $100,000 customer is just as much work as a $2 million customer. It can be. So you're obviously going to like spend your time on the $2 million customer. And, I would always spend my time on my big customers because I knew where my bread was buttered. And it's the 80-20 rule. 80% of your business comes from 20% of your customers. Well, when you have a guy like Schneider running broker dealers, the first thing you're going to do if you're dirty is offer high commissions. So if you offer 10% commission to your broker dealers to sell GPB paper, they're going to say, my time's limited. Why should I sell something that gets me 4% or 6% when I can sell GPB Capital for 10%? And that's part of the criminal aspect of this is they were incentivized to sell in a liquid investment that was high risk at a higher rate of capital. So if you Google GPB Capital broker dealer networks fined by FINRA, one of the fallouts of GPB Capital is that a lot of broker dealers who sold their 10% paper knew better. They knew that the firm the firm was in trouble with the Securities and Exchange Commission. They knew there were red flags, and that's why there were a lot of broker dealers who were ruined. More than a few went bankrupt for selling this paper because investors sued. So David Gentile had this sales network of Ascendant Capital, which he was a hidden owner of, along with JPB Capital. RC Tarsi's. Hi, Jeffrey and Chatters from Jackson. Hey, RC Tarsi. Glad to have you here. Poe on the Go. Glad to have you here. I made a joke with Poe on the Go. It's a running joke. He spent, what was it, Poe, 30 years in law enforcement. And he never once got to say, buck him, Dano. Buck him, Dano. And I just would have done it if I was a cop. I was a reserve police officer in my 20s for a short time because I have two uncles who were cops, and I couldn't be Poe. I couldn't be a street cop. You got to know. Nisa, how is David still alive when he did business with a mobster? Well, let's look at this question. Nisa raises a good question. Well, that's a very interesting question because someone like Mikhail Chernaya or Michael Cherney, he uses that name. Chernaya, Mikhail Chernaya or Michael Cherney. Mobsters want to be repaid. So I think if you look at the financials, my theory, and it's just a theory, it's a hypothetical, is that the waste management portfolio that David Gentile and GPB Capital bought was looted and plundered, because that thing lost a lot of money. I think they took their money because mobsters like to be paid back. It's like that scene, on Casino with Joe Pesci, where he wants to beat up that financial guy who lost his money. Like with mobsters, you don't lose their money. And speaking of mobsters, when that's a good question. I think they plundered enough money from the firm to be happy. I could be wrong. They might not be happy. They might not be happy with him. So that's a good question. I don't have the answer other than maybe they took a payday through the Cayman Islands, because doing the accounting on the money, we'll get into that. Poe, yes, people like Poe. The Scientology Money Project, 32 years, and never used that until talking to you. I know, Poe, it's a funny thing. I mean, like I said, I was a reserve cop for a short time in my 20s. I didn't use it either. I should have, but it's just a running joke between Poe and I. Poe's work. Are you working with your laser now? Let me know. So, okay, so you have this cast of characters, and I got to tell you, covering the GPB Capital story, there's a big cast of characters, like I said, including many Scientologists. And David Gentile did buy some Scientology companies, or companies owned by Scientologists. I think he overpaid for them. But what he did is he bought a lot of car dealerships. That was the main thing he did. And because car dealerships, you can buy a car dealership and then you can split it into 5 parts at least, where the land, the cars, the repair shop, um, extended warranties, and then service. So you can actually do a lot of, theoretically, I'm not saying David Gentile did it, but you can do a lot of money laundering if you have a car dealership. If you Google car dealerships, Northeast United States, criminal investigations, just do that. I'm not saying David Gentile do that, but I'm just saying that car dealerships in the Northeast of the United States are notorious for a lot of money laundering and financial crimes. So when you buy a car dealership, the first thing you do is you break it into 5 pieces. So let's say you buy 32 car dealerships from an existing, and David Gentile did do this from a guy named David Rosenberg. Say you buy 32 car dealerships. Well, first of all, you break them up so that the land is owned by a separate company, and the car dealership that sells cars has to rent the land from the company that owns the land. So that's one way you make money. Then your service center is a different profit center that has to pay the dealership money to service the cars. Then you have extended warranties, maintenance programs like selling undercoating, extended warranties. That's another profit center. Then there's another profit center if you want to do your marketing. If you want to break out the marketing and sales department as contractors for the dealer, so that the salespeople are not employees, but they're contractors. So there's a lot of ways. Gentile family line is an OG Italy crime family. Really, Tina, could you email me, jeffreyaugustine@gmail.com? They're from Ortigia, Sicily, and there's some ties having to do with cardboard that I'm going to tell on another story. Not trying to derail the subject, but when E. Stuart Mills is doing really well. He'll probably make an appearance later this week because there's some fuckery he needs to cover. Stupid moves for great. Yeah, no kidding. Do we fuck him? How busy charging billable hours to a little fake space Navy tent? I gotta tell you, E. Stuart Mills is charging. There's a legal term called a fuckload. I think David Miscavige is paying a fuckload of money to lawyers, he and his firms. But I don't want to get off topic. I'm going to get back to our major criminal defendant, David Gentile. So Jeffrey Schneider selling, paying broker dealers 10% commission. David Gentile's got some very shadowy associates, probably some of whom come through Jeffrey Schneider. And then we have some Scientologists. An interesting guy who worked for David was named Manuel Viana, who's worked for a lot of big dollar Scientologists, like Craig Jensen at the old Disc Keeper software. And it's almost like Manuel has showed up. It's almost like David Miscavige wants to use Manuel, who's got an earned Harvard MBA. He's a Scientologist. So that's really interesting. So you start tracing this down. There's a lot of like a few Clearwater companies that I think David Gentile overpaid for. To get back to your question with the mob, I think David Gentile overpaid for 5-Star Waste Management. And what access he got for buying a waste management company when he was supposed to be primarily involved in automotive companies. But David Gentile made that same pitch Grant Cardone makes, that we're going to buy companies that cash flow from day one, income producing companies. We're going to be the majority owner, let the existing management run them. That was the value proposition. So anyway, I've set this up, and we're just going to jump on. So the criminal trial is starting in June 2024. We're coming up quickly on the criminal trial. And David Gentile and Jeffrey Schneider have been filing a lot of pretrial motions. These are called motions in limine. And motions in limine are simply asking the judge what can and can't be discussed. It's sort of housekeeping before trial begins. Judge, we don't want this allowed into the trial. And then their side will argue, yes, it should be in. In this case, it's the United States Department of Justice, United States of America, people of the United States of America taking on David Gentile and Jeffrey Schneider. So I wanted to go through some of their quick motions, and I'm just going to set it up. So let me share the screen, and we're going to go to this first thing. These were just recently filed. You can see the date on them is April 26, 2024. So they were filed last week. United States District Court, Eastern District Court, New York. United States of America versus David Gentile and Jeffrey Schneider. Folks, I got to tell you, folks, just let me tell you this. Let me jump on and tell you this. Whenever you see the caption, United States of America versus, you do not want your name appearing on that, especially in the Eastern District of New York or the Southern District of New York, because their conviction rate's about 99%, and you are basically, to use a term of art, you're basically fucked. If the United States of America versus, and then you insert your name, you're fucked. These are the big people. These are the big people. So whenever the United States of America sues you, charges you criminally, it's really bad. So if you ever see, Xenu forbid you ever see your name, United States of America versus you. I'm not a lawyer, but I would just what's the best plea deal I can go? Because if I go to court with against the United States of America, I am. So these are motions in limine, and these things are frigging insane. Oh my God, the things that I don't know if David Gentile and Jeffrey Schneider are huffing paint, but what I do know is their investors have indemnified them, so the investors have to pay their legal fees. So they are throwing everything at the wall, hoping something sticks, because these motions in limine, and I will post them on my blog with this video, they are insane. They reek of desperation. And the lawyers, I don't even know if the lawyers they're getting paid a lot to write this, but they got to be laughing secretly. So, okay, motion in limine number 1. The court should preclude the government from arguing, introducing evidence, and or soliciting testimony regarding any alleged fraud with statements made to then existing investors of GPB Capital Holdings automotive portfolio. So they're saying if you were a then existing investor, they couldn't have possibly have cheated you. Because they say any allegedly misleading statements made to existing investors cannot serve as the basis for wires or securities fraud. If you read the statement, I mean, I can't make any sense of it. It's like if you were a then existing investor, anything we said you can't serve as a basis for wires or security fraud. And they actually try to argue that then existing investors, even though they were saying things, they make an argument that's very non sequitur in this filing that, well, because you can't get your money back, because you couldn't ask for your money back or redemption, we couldn't have defrauded you because you couldn't have gotten your money back anyway. It's comically insane, but it shows the desperation, the delusion. And they also want to motion the court should preclude the government from arguing, introducing evidence, or soliciting testimony regarding fees earned by defendants' companies. Now, this gets interesting. They don't want the jury to know or hear about how much money they made in fees. And I mean, can you imagine? So what they're going to be saying, as we'll be reading, is David Gentile and Jeffrey Schneider do not want the jury to hear about how much they made in fees, because that goes to motive to commit a crime, to commit wire fraud and securities fraud. Oh man, this is redolent. Redolent is a word means smells like. Smells like. This is redolent of Grant Cardone, who's all about making fees everywhere he can. So David Gentile and Jeffrey Schneider don't want the jury to hear about fees they made. They say that it would be, they don't think it's fair. These are, I was talking about Jeffrey Schneider's Ascendant Capital, affiliated broker-dealers making high commissions. They, for some reason, think that the jury shouldn't hear about it. And then the court should order the government to disclose promptly which portions of a transcript. They basically want to know who the snitches are ahead of trial. Now, I'll show you some redacted stuff. David Gentile and Jeffrey Schneider want to know what the government's going to present. And the government has a duty only to give them certain things under the Brady rules, which we'll get to. They have to give them certain discovery, but the government does not have to give them the case or what they'll argue. And this is almost like a setup for an appeal. The government should order, the court should order the government to disclose promptly which defendant statements the government intends to seek to admit from defendant's prior testimony. So basically, Schneider and Gentile had to testify before the SEC and the New Jersey Bureau of Securities, and they want to know, well, when we talk to them, what are you going to admit? You have to tell us. And they don't. And they also want to preclude evidence regarding the personal performance guarantees agreed to by Jeffrey Lash. So this may be hard to follow, but I'm going to post this 291, the document, this document. Basically, Jeff Lash was the third criminal co-defendant. He, as I covered previously, he took a plea deal. He was the weakest link in the chain. He took a 10-year sentence, 120 months, and pled to one count of wire fraud, which put him in federal prison for 120 months. And he allocuted, which is when you plead guilty to when you make a plea deal, you have to allocute. And you have to stand up in court and say what you did. So Jeff Lash allocuted. This is like I think Johnny Sack in The Sopranos had to allocute, and say that what he did with Tony Soprano and some other people, and that's what Samuel Gravano did. He had to allocute and say, yes, the mafia existed. I was a member of organized crime. I murdered these people, I engaged in these crimes. And when you allocute, you have to say everything you did. Because if you don't disclose, then they can charge you with that or take away the plea deal. So Jeff Lash stood up in court and allocated and said, I took 1.2 million from my private bank account. I transferred it to David Gentile's account, and it was booked as revenues. It was booked as revenue into GPB Capital. It was booked as revenue. Well, right there's wire fraud. So Jeff Lash, and the banking evidence is there. I mean, the wire transfer, it's all there. They got David Gentile on one count of wire fraud, which the max, and Schneider was involved as well, is 240 months, 20 years in prison. So this is why they're worried about Lash. They want to try to preclude Lash from talking about it, certain portfolio companies. And this has to do with, like, they're not going to get away with it, but Lash was involved in this. So this goes through their legal arguments for why no evidence should be presented. They're making this ridiculous argument that if you were a then existing investor, we couldn't possibly lie to you, even though they weren't lying to you. The indictment alleges that defendants engaged in a scheme to defraud investors and prospective investors through material misrepresentations and omissions. They argue that none of the allegedly false statements could have been material to a then existing investor's investment decision at the time of investment. This is the most bullshit thing I've ever read. Look, if you fraudulently induced an investor, David Gentile, Scientologist, is trying to say it could not have been material to your decision to invest. This is absolutely offensive. It's criminal to say that at the time, even though I knew it was a lie and a misrepresentation, it couldn't have any bearing on your decision to invest. Well, no. If you knew that it was a misleading statement, you wouldn't have invested. I don't even know why they're arguing this, but it shows David Gentile's criminal mind. This is such a bald-faced crook arguing that this evidence shouldn't be admitted, that I committed a crime, that I'm alleged to have committed a crime, but it really wasn't a crime at the time. So that's what he's saying. And he's saying because investors couldn't redeem their investments, none of the allegedly false statements could have been material to your decision to invest. So you were agreeing to lock up your money for 10 years or whatever the period was with GPB Capital. Since you couldn't get back your money anyway, we weren't defrauding you. This is almost an argument saying that, look, yes, we were lying to you, but since you couldn't get back your money anyway, it's not really fraud because we were locking up your money. You can kind of see the desperate logic in this, so the logic is just stupid. It's really bad lawyering. Whatever lawyers wrote this, it's really throwing shit at the walls to see what sticks. In fact, this is some of the most absurd, stupid lawyering I've ever seen. I've read a lot of legal filings. This is really stupid. It's really bad. If David Gentile, Jeffrey Schneider is listening, this is really bad stuff. If I were a juror and you actually tried to argue that, so they're trying to argue it to a judge. They're trying to argue this to a judge. The only possible conclusion I came to in the face of this is that they're just trying to set up something for an appeal. Because this is so stupid on its face to argue this. I was actually offended. But it shows that David Gentile is he has the Enron syndrome along with Schneider. They think they're the smartest man in the room and they're going to pull over something on a federal judge, really, or federal prosecutors. Yeah, it sounds like illogical logic. That's what it is. It's Scientology, basically. What's true for you is true for you, said Oren Hubbard. So I guess David Gentile is saying what's true for me is true for me. Since I was entitled to keep their money, I couldn't have stolen it from them. Like, the fuck are you? No, just get out of here. And that's why John, look, if you're this kind of guy, if you're this kind of screwball guy like David Gentile, that's why John Staluppi would see right through him and say, lose my number, David, lose my number. Yeah, don't call me back. You see, this kind of guy's not even a good bullshit artist. He's not even a good bullshit artist. Motion to eliminate, the court should preclude the government from presenting any evidence about the fees. Now, what Gentile and Schneider, they made a lot of money, and they don't want the jury to hear about it in the opening statement. How much money did they make? Well, you can see here in total, between approximately August 13, 2013 and March 2019, GPB Capital received approximately $79 million in management fees, and the GPB funds paid GPB Capital approximately $599,000 in acquisition fees. Ascendant, which David Gentile owned along with Schneider, generated approximately $187 million in selling fees. So you basically have, let's add that up. Let me get my calculating device. So we have $69 million in fees, and then we have another $187 million in fees. 256, that's $250 million in fees, $256 million in fees. That's what Schneider and Gentile made in fees. That's what they don't want the jury to hear about during opening statement. This doesn't even make sense. The government's entitled to show their motive. The government's entitled to show their motive to commit crime was $256 million in fees. And they pocketed a great deal of that. The broker dealers got 10% of that, maybe 25 million. But David Gentile, and Scientologist David Gentile, we don't even know yet how much he donated to the Church of Scientology. But to get $250 million as the proceeds of a crime, yeah, that's motive. That's a motive to defraud people and steal $1.7 billion. So, anyway, the motions continue in this similar vein. And I want to put it on my blog so you can read it. And please make comments. I don't have a lot of people commenting on my blog. I'd like to get more comments, which is why I go to live stream. Is David Gentile, Denise Miscavige Gentile's husband? No. There's a David Miscavige's twin sister, Denise Miscavige. She's gone by the name of Denise Gentile. She was married to a fellow named Gentile. There's no relationship. And then I think she was at Denise Miscavige Lacardi. So she's been married a few times. And hi, Windy City Thetan Watch. How you doing? Hi. So no relationship there. Denise got clipped for she was trading the devil's weed, marijuana. You can find it. She got clipped a couple of years ago. She and her husband, I forget which of her husbands, owned some apartment buildings, and Denise was trading Mary Jane, the devil's weed, marijuana, for rent. So she was allowing one of her tenants to give her Mary Jane instead of rent money. So Denise was getting high, and then she was in her SUV and she drove into I think a parked ambulance. And David got his WOG lawyers to get her out of it, but you can see her mugshot. In fact, this is just funny as an aside. So anyway, what we have is David Gentile making, and his criminal co-defendant making ridiculous arguments about why they should not be tried, or why certain evidence should not be admitted that's perfectly admissible. Well, you can't blame him for trying, because they're looking at a long time in prison. and they're going against the best prosecutors in the land. I'm going to go share something. So that just gives you a flavor of as we go down. I guess as you're headed toward prison, you're going to try to do everything you can. We'll head over to the blog and leave comments. That was a gentleman's request from Gentleman in a Tux. Thank you. And we should wear tuxes. In fact, next time maybe we'll have like a tux, like next live stream I do with other people, we'll wear tuxes. Yeah. Is protesting effective? I have issue with F stuff too. I think I prevented several people from joining the cult. That's getting off topic. I protest. I protested with Anonymous. I go down there and protest now. I think First Amendment auditing protest, I think is very effective. It's very effective because you're on the streets. I understand that some people don't like the live streaming, but having been out there at the Anonymous protests, having been out there with the live streamers like Jessica and Streets, and I saw Aaron, when he was in town, Surge. Yes, it's effective. There's an attritional effect. This is asymmetrical internet warfare against a multi-billion-dollar nefarious cult, one of whose members we are discussing today, David Gentile, is accused of stealing $1.7 billion from 17,000 investors. Yes, we should have a tux out. Let me share something with you. Let me just take that. So the criminal defense reeks of desperation, and it's full of absurd theories, bad lawyering. But look, they gotta make a try, especially trying to tell that, like, how can you is that a clip-on tie or do you tie it yourself? It's not a clip-on tie. It has a hook. It's not like, no, this is like, it's not a clip-on, but I didn't tie it myself. It has it goes around the back of the neck. So no, it's not like a clip-on like you'd buy at no, this is a very expensive tie. But I don't like the ties, they get like so no. I just get the ones with the hook that go around the back of the neck, and they're very nice. Tori may bring out, I hope Jesse Prince comes out. Wow. Yeah, I'd like to see Jesse. Do you think, Marla Dillard asks, do you think following these investors will lead back to David Miscavige's criminal activity in some way? No, I do not. It would have happened by now. What I think it will lead in some other ways, I'm not going to share. I'm not at liberty to share right now. But I will say this. There's some Scientologists it could lead back to. Some particular Scientologists. Some are in Nashville. Some Clearwater people. But I do want to show you one more thing. That's two more things real quick. Let's just go through this. Stop screen. And I want to share a screen just by way of like doing a drive-by. Okay, so where am I? Okay, on my blog, I had an article some time ago called Scientology and the Curse of July 8. Scientology, because that's July 8 is their worst day. It's a numerological thing I play with. In July, it's also my birthday. But a lot of bad things have happened to July 8. You can go look this up on my blog. So they got raided by the FBI on July 8. A lot of bad things happened and these exposés. But on July 8, 2013, David Miscavige's twin sister, Denise Gentile, pleads guilty to a lesser charge, pays fines. And this is David Miscavige's twin sister, Denise, her booking photo when she got picked up for having the devil's weed and driving it. I don't think that the weed was as big of a problem. A little dope. I mean, so she's COB's sister and she's using a little dope. Yeah, no big deal. people smoke pot, but she drove her SUV into the ambulance. I think that was so. Anyway, that's Denise's booking photo, Pinellas County Sheriff. So if you didn't know, now you know. David Miscavige has a twin sister named Denise Gentile, who I guess back then at least likes to smoke the. There's Tony's article on it, which is funny. Scientology's leader twin Denise Gentile pleads guilty to lesser charges, pays fine. She was facing a DUI and a pot possession charge. So she just took a charge of reckless driving, agreed to attend DUI school, and paid several court costs and fines. Folks, that's not very Scientology-like. If you're an OT, you generally don't, smoke pot and drive into, get high and drinking and smoking pot. Why wasn't she declared? I mean, that's really bad. Please don't reveal anything in progress. Oh, I don't. Operational security, OPSEC as we call it. Oh no, I'm just alluding to it because in Scientology they have what's called the miss withhold phenomena. That's where you're keeping a secret. So the people listening to me now, they know goddamn well what I'm talking about. Nashville, excuse me, that there could be some problems. Yeah, you drive into an ambulance, like that's like driving into a cop car when you're been smoking pot and drinking. Bad PR for the church, Denise. That's why they don't use her as a spokesperson. Like you wouldn't use Denise for Narcanon to promote Narcanon because she likes to get high. I don't have anything. Look, Denise wants to get high and it's legal. I don't care. Good for her. If I had a brother like David Miscavige, you might need to get high or just like being part of that family. So kind of a funny other thing. This is just criminal incompetence. This is where the government. This is why. So when your name is on United States of America versus you, and your name's Jeffrey Schneider, this was really funny. So I'm going to share the screen. Stop screen here and let's share. So moving away from Denise, who likes to get high. Okay, so Jeffrey Schneider, he was using his Gmail account, and this was an attempt so that FINRA couldn't look at it because FINRA was entitled to read his emails. So he was using a Gmail account, and when the FBI raided it, they got a warrant to get his personal Gmail account, which is Jeffrey Schneider at Gmail, if you want to email him. Anyway, he's arguing that these emails, they seized like 26,000 emails on his personal account, but they drilled it down to 379 seized documents. So Schneider said these should not be allowed in. And so in the most recent pretrial, the government said, fine, we don't need these. Given that the government does not seek to use these documents in its case in chief, the motion is moot. However, the government did something brilliant. It said the government reserves the right to use the 379 seized documents if the defendant opens the door by testifying falsely or inconsistently at trial. Now, this is just genius. This is why you don't want to go up against the Southern District, New York, or Eastern District, New York. So they said, okay, we're not going to use the 379 emails. But if you falsely testify or inconsistently, we reserve the right to use them. So this backs Schneider into a corner. So they're saying, okay, Jeffrey Schneider, we don't need the 379 documents, but if you lie on the stand falsely or inconsistently, we can use them. So Schneider now has to decide if he's going to testify and get in the stand. Because if he does, and the prosecution can get him to lie or shade or just twist things a little, then they can introduce the documents. So Schneider's in a bit of a sticky wicket. It's almost like they stuck it to him saying, fine, we don't need these documents. We got you on wire fraud for sure. But if you get up on the stand and testify, and you lie even a little bit, we can use the documents. So now Schneider has to say, but if I don't testify on my own behalf and I can't put on a defense, I might get sentenced to the rest of my life in prison, 860 months or whatever. A similar, out here in California, a similar size Ponzi scheme, 1.7 billion, got the doctor involved, 50 years in prison, 50 years. So that's 600 months. So now Schneider's been like, it's one of those brilliant defenses. Like, we don't need it, but if you lie, you're screwed. We will introduce it. So now Schneider's got some thinking to do. I hope there is trouble in Nashville for personal reasons. Yeah, there could be some trouble in Nashville via Scottsdale and people. Should you have a top hat with your tux? I don't. I should get a top. Yeah, I should get a top hat with my tux. Yeah, I will. I will definitely make that the next item. I think that would look very stylish. So they got Schneider that way, and then I wanted to show you one other thing. Just two more things, and then we'll stop screen. I'm going to show you what something looks like when you have a document and you're going to court, and all the exhibits they have been introducing. If you go on Pacer and get them, this yellow sticker here, you can see this is what a government evidence tag looks like on an exhibit. So this is Exhibit B, and it's a GPB document about restated agreement and partnership. This is what you don't want to see when the FBI comes in and takes all your documents and your phones and computers and hard drives, prints out. This is actually a government exhibit tag, and there are a lot of government exhibit tags. There's a lot, a huge number, and that's got to unnerve any criminal defendant when they see that government exhibit tag on something they wrote that has fraudulent content in it. So the government's admitted this. That's part of discovery. They get to see, and that's on several of the documents. You'll see that yellow tag on, I don't know, probably 300 documents, I think, if I recall. And then I'm going to show you one more thing here. Okay, now this is a declaration, and what I draw your attention to on this is see how much is redacted. On May 24, 21, the government produced 6 FBI FD302s. Okay, now let me explain a little bit. When the government interviews you, when the FBI interviews you, they fill out form FD302. They're just called 302s. So like when Mike Rinder went to the FBI and talked to them, the FBI fills out a 302. If you go to the FBI, one, you're not off the hook, because when you go in to talk to the FBI, you're not, and this is something I'm going to talk about specifically to Mike Rinder, Marty, other people who want to talk to the FBI, they get a 302 filled out to them. And when you talk to the FBI, it's not a passive thing about, oh, tell us your story, and then you get to walk out. No, the FBI is going to ask you questions. You're going to be tape recorded, videoed. They're going to take notes. They're going to fill out a 302. They're going to ask you, well, what did you do? So for those of you who think, and this is where there has to be more lawyers involved to help people think about how the law really works. People who are critical of Rinder, I don't even know if they know a 302. And I'm just being objective here. Do you know what a 302 is? Do you know what goes on during an interview with the FBI? The FBI is not going to believe you about everything. Part of a 302 is they're going to check you out. They're going to ask you questions. What did you do? What was your specific involvement? Is there anything you're not telling us? So you go and talk to the FBI. You don't get to go in and tell your side of the story. They're not interested. They'll listen to your side of the story, but then they're going to ask questions. They're going to want documents. They're going to want a lot of stuff from you. So what's bothering in this court document, it's been redacted to protect several people who are going to testify who wore wires into meetings. So the FBI has interviewed numerous people on these dates, and they're blocking their name. The criminal co-defendants Schneider and Gentile are seeking the identity of certain witnesses ahead of trial. But look at how much the government's had to redact. Big parts of this are redacted. And this shows you they got some explosive testimony. My sources told me people were in wires. I know at least 5 people who did. And there's a lot of FBI 302s going on. And as part of the Brady material, and you can Google Brady material, that's what the government is supposed to give criminal defendants. But look at this. Look at how much has been redacted. The government has so much stuff on them. And Schneider and Gentile want to know more about it, but they're not entitled to get it. Or it's been filed under seal. So there is a lot of explosive stuff about which we do not know, but will come out. Look at that. It just goes on and on. So this one is 283-2, and I'll post it. But this shows you how much the feds have, and they're holding for court. So there's going to be people. There's going to be people testifying. The government has a lot of stuff under seal, and they're trying to say the government didn't produce everything to which they're entitled. The government's saying, no, you got everything you're entitled to, but you don't get to know our whole case before it. I've been wondering, Holly Lewis says, about that with Render and him turning over his documents. Well, I've talked to the FBI and other agencies, and if you Zach Morgan can be valuable for Aaron because he explains things in civil law. In criminal law, when you go in and talk to the FBI, you're not getting a free pass. They're going to actually ask you questions. There have been plenty of examples where people go in and talk to the FBI hoping to settle a score with their enemy or a score with their enemy, where they wind up getting arrested during an interview with the FBI, where they just went in to talk. There have been plenty of cases where people who went in to talk wound up getting arrested. So you got to realize it's very intense when you go in and talk. And I just wanted to make that point to be objective, to be fair. You have to know how the criminal justice system works and the risks that people encounter when they talk to the FBI. Because the FBI, like I said, they don't just listen to you. They're going to ask you some really hard questions. They're going to ask you about your motives, who you know, are you withholding? What are you not telling? I mean, it gets pretty intense. Serge and Mitch also talk to the FBI. They can check the facts quickly, but don't appear to have investigated aspects of the felony actions. I don't know why 10, 15 years ago, FBI wanted info. Yeah, I don't know. There's the 302s, and I'm just saying I don't have all the facts. The FBI can be compartmentalized, and I'm hoping to get. There are statutes, and the thing is, the FBI will take a lot of information. They'll talk to prosecutors to see if there's a case. Sometimes if witnesses are gone, people have died, or Scientology's gotten people out of the country, pay people off. So the answer is, I don't know what the FBI knows. None of us do. None of us knows why the FBI has failed to prosecute. So now there's a renewed effort. Mona's involved in it. A lot of people, a lot of never-ends I'm very happy to help them. I was writing a lot about the structure and nature of corporate Scientology, because you have to know how Scientology exists as a legal entity to go to the FBI. So on the continued push, personalities are involved, people who know stuff, statutes. It's very complex, but the higher thing to get their IRS 501c3 recognition taken down is the biggest goal. Now, I called the FBI twice in my life. The only thing they ever said to me was I can neither confirm nor deny that. Yeah, they want to know everything, but whether they will tell you anything, they won't tell you anything. So I urge everyone to talk to the FBI so that there's a 302 on file, and yeah. So there's going to be disagreements in this movement, quite intense disagreements, because, second gens and third went through some horrific stuff. But also be careful about what you say. There was a statement made recently by a creator that could be construed as a threat, and a violent threat, and I didn't like that at all. So you got to, like, passions. You got to keep your passions in check. You should talk to a lawyer. You should get legal advice. Have all your documents and evidence in order. And one thing the FBI will ask you what your motives are before they begin, and you tell them your motives are to take down this cult because you grew up and you were subjected to horrendous abuse, or you have specific knowledge of financial crimes. Have your documents in order. Know what your motives are. Sometimes the FBI and the IRS will think you want to use them to file a lawsuit. So you make it clear that I don't plan to file a lawsuit, or I might plan to file one. The FBI doesn't want to think it's being used. And I think that might have been part of the IRS and FBI reluctance, or parent reluctance, is like, we're not going to be your army. We're not going to go do this so you can sue. So sometimes they're very skeptical. I got hit hard by 2 federal agencies saying, are you just doing it so you can set up a lawsuit? And I said, no, I don't. I'm not filing a lawsuit. I don't have standing to file a lawsuit. I don't have a cause. So all I'm saying is we could use some more lawyers on SPTV and in the movement to educate and advise. And informally, you're not in a case, but it's like Zach does good work clarifying things for Aaron. I think Aaron's smart to have an in-house lawyer. I have plenty of lawyers. I have one I'm talking to start bringing on to start developing stuff as we get down closer to trial date. A securities lawyer I'm talking to. If you're a securities lawyer and you'd like to come on as we near GPB Capital and start covering case, reach out to me. It's good for you. You can get PR. You can get publicity for you, and I can get the benefit of your wisdom and legal skills for listeners, and we can all learn from you as we head to the GBB criminal case. So, yeah, none of this is easy. There's a lot of hard questions. There's conflicts, and that's just part of the movement things that go on. But I'm just saying that how many people knew about a 302, and that's why I try to educate about how the system works. So anyway, I hope you've enjoyed this update. Documents will be on my blog shortly. And as far as Schneider and Jeffrey Schneider and David Gentile, they deny everything. They don't want any of the evidence admitted. Oh, God forbid that any evidence should be submitted. So that's it for GPB Capital as we head toward criminal court. They don't want anything admitted. They don't want any evidence admitted. They basically are in a state of denial and delusion. And thank you, Holly. I appreciate your support. Everyone who supports just by listening, spreading the word about what all of us creators are doing on SPTV. We all appreciate it very much. We appreciate our audience. Have you been chuckling at the inept PIs out recently? Yeah, I have. It's funny when being a PI, it's like doing the work, like whatever you do for a living. If you see someone who's doing the same job, I kind of know. Yeah, well, you spot an inept PI. It's like when you're a PI, you're not impressed with PIs because it's like you're a PI. It's like let's say you were a pilot of a 747 and you met another pilot of a 747. It's like, yeah, I do the same thing, so I'm not impressed. It's like it's a skill level, but yeah, let evidence. I'm all for letting all the evidence come out, free speech, debate, argument. It can be intense, but that's part of the process of us getting the truth out about Scientology. There's personality conflicts. You talk. Nora talked to Mitch, which I thought was a great interview with Liz moderating. I thought that was great work. So it's messy. It's not perfect, but it gets results done and it gets the word out. Well, thank you, Melissa. Flattery will get you more. So anyway, I've got to get to the piano bar. That's why I'm really wearing a tux. And we do at the piano bar and the Leopard Lounge. The Leopard Lounge tonight. I'll be on playing the piano at bar, so drop by. No, not really. I can't sing. But anyway, thank you so much. And I hope you have a great evening. I'm going to do a show on Grant Cardone, John Legere's lawsuit. Aaron covered, as I said earlier, and I've got my own thoughts on that particular individual. So until next time, for the Scientology Money Project, Jeffrey Augustine, thank you for listening. And we'll get the music up. Get the music up, Johnny. And are we on? Are we on? Okay. There we go. We're going to fade out with that nice music. See you next time. And next time, remember, it's tux. It's formal wear for our next show. See you then.